So, my name is Beth, and I am coming to you today to read to you about Boy Scouts of America Communication Merit Badge. So, my purpose in doing this is I'm working on Wood Badge tickets, and anybody that's involved in Boy Scouts of America should know what Wood Badge is. And so, this is my project. I'm going to read 3 of these for anybody who has any visual learning disabilities or would just prefer to have this material read to you. So feel free to pause at any time, look through the information. I'm not going to read word for word every single page. That would take forever, but I will make sure that you know where I'm at so you can follow along with me. So we are starting with communication. On page 7, communication, a key to opening doors. Communication is important to your life. Being able to communicate effectively is key to achieving success. It is the way you get people to understand your values, interests, talents, abilities, needs, and wants. It is how you show your knowledge about things. Good communication means more than just expressing yourself. It also involves listening carefully to others, knowing when to speak up, when to keep your thoughts to yourself. If you can communicate well, you will be better at just about everything you do, from scouting to schoolwork and being a good friend. As you grow older, your ability to communicate grows with you. When you were an infant, you used crying to communicate simple messages such as "I'm hungry" or "my diaper needs changing." At about 6 weeks of age, you learned to communicate by smiling. This was how you said "I'm happy" or "I'm comfortable with you." At around 6 months, you started talking. A mixture of sounds and words tumbled out of your mouth. Every day you got a little better at it. By the time you started school, you had advanced from "Dada" to "Can you come to play?" When you are old enough to get a job, good communication skills will make you a valued and productive worker. Some common symbols of communication and what do they mean on page 8. So some common symbols here are a peace sign, a leaf, a no smoking, male, female. And the answers to this little quiz are upside down at the bottom of your page on page 8. Today, you are able to communicate complex thoughts about things like sports, math, and movie plots. You may have learned a special group of words related to a favorite hobby or sport. You may have even learned to communicate in a second language. Different forms of communication. As you work on your communication merit badge, you may wonder, what is communication? Simply put, communication is the act of sharing information with others. Most forms of communication are symbolic. A symbol is something that means or stands for something else. For example, the American flag is a symbol of America. Language. Language is the most common way that we use symbols to communicate. Most languages use an alphabet to symbolize sounds in the spoken language. We combine these letters to form words. Some words symbolize things you can hold or touch. Apple, for example, stands for fruit we love to eat. Other words, such as love, intelligence, and freedom, stand for things you cannot hold or touch. We combine words to form sentences. Sentences state facts, opinions, questions, or commands, such as, "The apple looks delicious," and "May I have one?" Page 9, speaking without words. Not all communication uses words. There are many ways we communicate non-verbally or without words. Non-verbal communication can still use symbols. However, for example, if a scout is on a trail and sees a sign with a drawing of a bicycle with a bold red line drawn over it, the scout knows that no bicycles are allowed on the trail, even though there are no words on the sign. Some types of communication use words and nonverbal symbols. The 8-sided red sign printed with the word "stop" in white letters tells drivers to stop their car. You would probably know the sign's meaning even if the word was not there. That is because the color red, which signifies danger, and the 8-sided shape, called an octagon, are used on no other road sign in the United States. In this case, 3 different symbols, a word, a color, and a shape, all help communicate some important meaning. Talking with your body. Another nonverbal way to communicate is through body language. Body language is communication through body movements or gestures. It can be as simple as a frown or a nod of the head. Shaking hands when you meet someone is a nonverbal way to communicate goodwill. For people in the military, a salute, raising the right hand held flat to the forehead over the eyebrow, shows respect. Legend has it that the practice had its origin in the Middle Ages when knights raised the visors of their helmets to greet each other. Body language, like spoken languages, can have different meanings in different countries. This could lead to misunderstandings. In some countries, nodding the head up and down means no, while it means yes in the United States. The peace sign gesture, holding up the middle and index finger in a V, may be polite in this country, but considered rude or insulting in other cultures. Body language can even communicate whole sentences. For example, many people who are deaf and their friends and families use a special language called American Sign Language. This language uses hand movements and finger spelling to communicate thoughts. People may sometimes speak body language without knowing it. If you grew up in the United States, you might lower your eyes and look at the floor when you are feeling shy. You might raise an eyebrow to show doubt or confusion. Squinting your eyes can signal anger. In other cultures, these movements may have different meanings. Other ways of communicating without words. Words and body language are not the only way to communicate. Dressing nicely to go to a place of worship tells others, I respect this religious tradition. Sitting in the front of the classroom rather than in the back says, I want to learn and do well in this class. Mass communication and digital technologies. Communication that is meant for a large audience is sometimes called mass communication. This used to mean communicating through radio, TV, newspapers, magazines, films, and theater. Today, many people communicate using digital, computer-related technologies. Some of these are mass communication tools. Others help individuals or small groups communicate. Digital tools include websites, social networking sites, blogs, instant messaging, and text messaging using cellular phones and other handheld devices. We will look more closely at digital communication in a later chapter. So you're probably wondering, why study communication? What is important about this? This is what we're going to talk about next. Why study communication? If we learn to communicate naturally, why do we study communication? The answer is that we all can improve our communication skills if we practice them. That means learning to be a better listener and a more confident public speaker. Earning this merit badge will make you more aware of communication in your life. You will learn how to interact better with others and improve your communication skills. You can use these skills when you need to inform, persuade, or get the attention of people. According to the National Communication Association, communication is a learned skill. Most people are born with the physical ability to talk, but we learn over time to speak well and communicate effectively. In other words, we do not communicate naturally. We learn how to communicate from others by watching them, listening to them, and doing what we see others do. We learn from our parents and teachers how to communicate better. Keeping a communication log. By observing how you communicate and how much time you spend communicating, you can learn about your strengths and weaknesses as a communicator. Requirement 1A asks you to keep a detailed communication log for 1 day. Doing so will help you see your communication style more clearly. You will know how much time you spend online or watch TV, listen to the radio, and read. You will learn how much time you spend on the phone and in face-to-face interactions, and how often you use email, text messaging, instant messaging, or write letters to friends and relatives. So on page 13 of your Merit Badge book is a sample communication log that tells you everything you need to know. It has the times over here and what you need to place, like listening, interacting, writing, email, texting, so on and so forth. And that's how you keep up with your progress for activity 1A. So, moving on to page 15, the next section is good listener, good leader. So, in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to listen. You have to hear what people are saying, not just nod your head yes, That's not communicating very effectively because you're not hearing what other people are saying. So this next section is going to teach us about listening so that we can lead. And in Scouts, leading is important. Have you ever met someone new and then promptly forgotten the person's name? This can be very embarrassing. Listening is one of the most important skills you can learn. Scientists say that we learn 85% of what we know by listening. However, listening is more than just hearing. Listening is receiving. When you focus on the speaker and what is being said, you learn more, remember more, and retain the information longer. A small section over here in the corner. I'm going to read this. Notice how active listening includes repeating what you have heard. Active listening helps the speaker and the listener understand and perhaps resolve a problem or conflict. We will discuss active listening in the next section. How to remember names. People like it when you call them by name. This shows respect. It often makes people glad they have met you. Here is a neat trick to help you remember a person's name. Let's say you meet a man named Bob Brown. First, say his name aloud. It's nice to meet you, Bob. Repeat his name to yourself a couple of times. So in your head, you're thinking, Bob Brown, Bob. Next, hang the name in a mental picture. To do that, look at Bob and picture him in a scene based on his name. For example, imagine that he is in a rowboat with the letters Bob on the side. The rowboat is bobbing up and down in a sea of chocolate brown. Chocolate milk. The next time you see Bob Brown, this picture will come to mind and you will remember his name and probably laugh too. Practice listening to the speaker with respect. If you work hard not to interrupt, even when you really want to make a point, the speaker will respect you more. Being a good listener is important in building and keeping friendships. If you take the time to listen to your friends when they need you, they probably will do the same for you. There are many different reasons for listening. When you listen to your teacher in school or to your scoutmaster at a troop meeting, you are listening to gain information. You may have listened to someone who is trying to persuade you about something. Perhaps you have listened to sounds in nature or music that helped you relax. Some people fall asleep faster when they are in a tent near a babbling brook. For others, it helps to hear big city background sounds of taxis honking and sirens wailing. Keep a listening journal. Requirement 1B asks you to keep a journal of your listening experiences to make you more aware of this key skill. Make a note of when you listen to gain information and when someone is trying to persuade you about something. Identify when you listen to appreciate or enjoy something and when you listen to understand someone's feelings. Remembering the important things. We cannot remember everything. We must decide what is important to remember. Some scientists have discovered that just after we hear something, we will remember less than half of it. By the next day, we might recall only up to a third of the message. Earlier, we explained how to create a mental picture to help you recall someone's name. Another great memory tool is to write down what you need to remember. As soon as you can after you hear something, or even while you are listening, write down the things you need to remember. If you have a smartphone, iPad, or tablet computer with note or voice memo applications, you can use those to record what you want to remember. Be sure to look at your notes or listen to your memo later. If necessary, rewrite your remarks more clearly and add details to help you understand your notes. So I have an example of this. So when I work, I work as a nurse, and when I work with patients and I have other staff members and, just people coming at me all day long telling me, hey, so-and-so needs this, or, patient A needs this, and this happened with patient B. That's a lot of information coming at you in a short amount of time. I write those down. Like, I keep a notebook, and I keep it with me at all times when I'm working, and I write down notes. Patient A had this happen, and patient B needs this. And then at the end of the day, when I'm like making sure I get everything done, I can check off on my list. That way I don't miss things, and I remember things better that way. So that's just a piece of advice. So on page 17, you have this blue box up here. We're going to read that. It's tips for better listening. Pay attention. It is natural for your mind to wonder when someone is talking to you. Often, we think about what we are going to say next, rather than listening to what the speaker is saying. However, a good listener ignores that impulse. Be responsive. A good listener lets the speaker know that the message is getting across. Instead of being distracted, look directly and often at the speaker's eyes. Nod your head and make short responses like, yes, I get it, or that's interesting. Restate what you heard. Another great listening skill is to state what you think the speaker just said. Using your own words, ask questions if necessary. This helps you make sure you understand what was said. We'll meet at 3 o'clock at the snack bar in the bowling alley, right? Or, did you say at the snack bar next door to the bowling alley? Blue box on page 18. While you lead the discussion, remember that your task is to be part referee, part coach, and part observer. Do not take sides. Remind participants to make all comments to the group leader or to the whole group. Prevent conversations between individuals or redirect them to the group. Leading small group discussions. Leading a small group discussion is exciting. As a scout, you may have the chance to lead a discussion in your patrol or troop. As a student, you may get to lead a discussion for a school project or sports team. Here are some other kinds of group discussions: work groups, focus groups, brainstorming groups. Requirement 1C asks you to lead a small group discussion. Before the discussion begins, give the group clear guidelines about the topic and the format of the discussion. You might start by saying, today we are going to brainstorm ideas for Eagle Scout projects. I want each person to share new ideas and make suggestions for our current projects. We will sit in a circle and each of us will have 3 minutes to share our own thoughts. After each speaker finishes, the group will have 3 minutes to ask questions. Then, the person at the speaker's right will have a turn to speak. As a group leader, you cannot join the conversation. Avoid talking too much. Instead, stay a little bit apart to watch, listen, and guide. During the discussion, keep the group members focused on discussing the correct topic. Don't let the group get distracted. Make each person feel that it is okay to talk about their own experiences or ideas. Give shy people a chance to talk. Encourage them with a smile or a kind word. Prevent any one person from taking over the conversation. Do this respectfully. Make sure the group gives each person a chance to speak and be heard without interruption. If necessary, help group members to compromise. Watch the time to make sure the group completes the discussion or task. As each person speaks, observe how the person communicates and how others respond. Look for nonverbal communication. Notice how a smile, shrug, or raised brow can reveal a person's feelings or thoughts. When each speaker finishes, thank them for participating. When the time is nearly up, close by summarizing the main points and the group's conclusions. Text message or formal letter. During the Civil War, before there were computers, telephones, or even motorized mail delivery, letters often took months to arrive. Union and Confederate soldiers wrote detailed and expressive letters and used beautiful penmanship. Their friends and relatives cherished these handwritten words. Many of those letters, which became family keepsakes and were passed down through generations, survive today. Requirement 1D asks that you list as many methods of communication as you can and identify to your counselor when each method should and should not be used. Today, we use many forms of communication: text messages, social media, telephones, emails, faxes, regular mail, and express mail delivery around the globe by plane. There is no one right way to communicate. However, you can pick the best way to send a message, depending on who will get it and why you are sending it. Here are some simple guidelines to help you choose the right way to communicate. Formal letters. We use formal letters to communicate for school or business purposes, to write recommendations. Faxes is a copy of a document that is transmitted over a telephone line or the internet. Text messaging, sometimes called texting. This form of communication involves sending short messages, usually by cell phone. Social media are forms of electronic communication through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content. Email, short for electronic mail, has changed how many of us communicate. Emailed messages travel electronically. They can be just about any length and can have attachments such as photographs, videos, or documents. And it usually reaches its destination instantly. Phone calls are great for hearing other people's voice, casual chatting, making quick plans, or finishing some business for your scout troop. Some people communicate better by talking than by writing. Phone calls do have drawbacks. People are not always available to take your calls. It is hard to exchange detailed information over the phone, and visual images or information that needs to be stored cannot be shared. Thank you notes. If you receive a gift, whether it is in person, such as at your birthday party, or through the mail from faraway friends or relatives, you should write a thank you note that specifically mentions the gift you received, written by hand, and send it in the mail. Perhaps someone has been very generous or kind to you, inviting you to stay for a week-long visit or come along on a family trip. In this case, it is even more important to send a thank you note within a week. You should also think about sending a small gift along with the note. This is particularly important if you had home-cooked meals, went sightseeing, or did something else out of the ordinary, such as if you were driven to events or appointments. You do not have to spend a lot of money. Inexpensive food gifts are a good idea. Moving on to page 24. Oh, sorry. So I didn't read word for word all of those ways of communicating: email, phone calls, thank you notes, text messaging, social media. It's a lot of information. We get the gist of it. Creative ways to describe yourself. Requirement 2A calls for you to find a creative way to describe yourself. Choose a method that you feel comfortable using. It should suit your personality and allow you to express yourself completely. Here are a few ideas. Make a collage. Create a slideshow. Write a story. If you are artistic, you might want to create a series of drawings showing yourself and some people and events that are important in your life. Similarly, if you are musical or theatrical, you may choose to write a song or a short skit to fulfill this requirement. Make a good sales pitch. Requirement 2B asks you to make a sales pitch for a concept, product, or service. A sales pitch is a persuasive speech in which you try to get someone to buy your product or service. Here is one way to organize a sales pitch that works. It contains 4 parts. Get the audience's attention. Tell a story about how your product or service changed your life or the life of someone like you, or like the people in your audience. Connect to the audience's needs. Your audience does not necessarily care about your product. What people are about is their own needs. Research your audience. They are scouts, adults, apartment renters, homeowners. Know enough about your audience beforehand so that you can tailor your presentation to fit their needs. You would not try to sell apartment renters a lawnmower service. However, you might successfully sell a dog walking service to them. Offer a solution. Be specific about how your product or service will fulfill a need of the audience. Explain how their lives will improve if they use your service or product. Describe the problems that might arise if they do not. Close the deal. Before you end your speech, ask your listeners to act. Make it clear how they can buy your product or sign up for your service right away. And at that, we are going to pause at page 27, the 5-minute speech. We will pick that up in part 2.